Kings Island is now open for the 2026 season. And when you visit Kings Island, as you know, you can work up quite an appetite walking around the park, which begs the question, have you bought your dining plan yet? If not, well, you might want to hold off on buying that for now. Hello, everyone. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig. This is Tower Topics.
Our Topics drops 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button or follow us on your favorite podcast apps.
Yeah, so Ryan, this is not going to be an anti-dining plan episode. We're not going to make it that. For some guests, it can still make a lot of sense, but this is going to be about helping listeners make a smart purchase, based on how they actually visit the park. So, for some, the frequent visitors, the plan, may still offer great value for you, but for others, it may be worth waiting before committing.
Yeah. I mean, so your options at this point, if you have not purchased yet, and honestly, the price of the dining plan doesn't budge all that much. So I did, as I said, I was going to, and I bought mine while at the park on past preview day, because you never, well, first of all, they hadn't released the menus, but you never know when it's going to be that year when they decide, you know what, hamburgers, pizza, chicken tenders, hot dogs, we'll stick with that.
Exactly. And, the all season dining plan, it sounds like a no brainer, on paper when you're looking at the website, pay once, eat all season. But before you click the buy, there are a few things that guests may want to consider, based on recent experiences. Sometimes the best purchase is the one you make after gathering more information.
Yep, exactly. So the first thing, and we brought this up before, is that it seems like the portion sizes are inconsistent at best. And the portion sizes do matter. If you're going to be at the park, you can't eat for another 4 hours. Somebody in the comments said this: if I can't eat my second meal for 4 hours, you better give me enough food that I'm full. But
Yeah.
It seems like there has been some inconsistencies when it comes to portion sizes. And with that, here's a couple of different ones, so nice we said it twice, but these cones, obviously ice cream is not part of the meal plan, but that's almost comically small.
It's an example, exactly. And if guests are noticing reduced portion sizes, and, based on the photos that have been sent to us, they are, the value equation, it changes. Smaller portions can mean you're paying for quantity that no longer matches the expectation that you had when you purchased it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, under certain conditions, it seems like the meals could end up feeling like snacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that impacts your overall return, on the dining plan if it does feel like a snack. And then in between those 4 hours, you feel like you got to go get something else to eat.
Yeah. But that's how they drive per capita spending. I'm starting to see what they're doing here. So, and then the food quality can be inconsistent, and we've seen this across the chain. So we've seen some people say, I had Jukebox and it was awesome. And we've had people say, I got Chicken Shack and I've never been more insulted by a chicken in my life. The consistency matters, especially when you're going to have repeat customers, because they're going to know when the quality dips. We've heard several things about using lesser quality meat in the burgers and stuff. That is something people might pick up on, and that doesn't bode well for the future.
No, it doesn't. And if quality, varies from visit to visit, Ryan, it just becomes harder to justify that upfront cost. You should have a certain expectation of what you're going to get, but you just don't know right now. I mean, it's just kind of, based on who you're talking to, what day they visited, what restaurant they went to. It's all over the map with the consistency there.
Yeah. Now we're still early, but the service and the wait times are definitely a consideration. This has always been hit or miss, but slow service at several locations can eat into your valuable park time. We're talking about season pass holders, but if you're one of those people, again, that visits 50 times a season, and if you have to wait an hour at the brew house and it doesn't matter to you, you're not who we're talking about. We're talking about maybe the 2 or 3 time a season visitors where every hour means a lot. Think about if you go to Disney and you have a dining experience that's 2.5 hours. Well, that cuts a lot into your day, and every minute costs money. So think of it that way. Nobody wants to spend a big part of their day eating, especially at Kings Island, unless.
Yeah, and yeah, nobody wants to be standing in line. The longest lines are at the food stands instead of enjoying all the different rides and things that you can do there. If restaurants are understaffed or underwhelmed, the dining plan again it becomes less convenient for you.
Yeah. And then if you are a late arrival person, guilty as charged, they do make it challenging, especially to get that second meal or even the first meal in a lot of cases. Sometimes restaurants are closing very, very early in order to prevent people from getting the second meal, presumably. Also, it's probably nice that they save some labor too. But if you're a pass holder that stops by after work, for example, you know, the restaurant that you get to, especially if you don't live like immediately in Mason. I mean, I live, let's say, an hour away with traffic. I get off work at 5, so I get there at 6. That gives me maybe an hour or so. If I don't eat very first, then it's going to start limiting my options, especially during the week when they start closing restaurants that have typically been open at least until 9.
Yeah. So right now with 9 p.m. closing, so say you get off work on a Friday, now they're open on Fridays, you decide you want to ride the beast, maybe 45 minutes or so for that one other ride. Now all of a sudden you're 7:30, quarter to 8, you go to try to get something to eat. A lot of the restaurants are already in the process of closing down. The ones that are open, you double the lines at those because those are the only things open. Everyone's trying to get that second meal. You might not even be able to get your first meal without waiting 45 minutes to an hour at the end of the night. So you really don't have that great evening visit, that you were hoping for because you spent a good portion of that waiting in line for the few restaurants that remain open the last hour of the night.
Yeah, I mean that last hour rush can be a big problem. And we've seen this with International Street ever since the meal plans came out. The La Rosas and what was Skyline used to be open until the park closed. Nowadays, 10 o'clock, shut the doors because they don't want people to get their second meal on International Street.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of unfortunate, but it does take away from the value that people try to get from the dining plan. Um, and it's one of
Yeah, it
those.
loses that value.
Yeah, exactly. But if they're going to try to visit to drive frequent visits with the dining plan, you don't want to make the plan difficult to use, underwhelming, not worth the time. So that's kind of our advice with Kings Island. They're at kind of a pivotal moment. If they're going to start doing things that are questionably ethical, take away quality, take away options, start closing restaurants, try to actively prevent people from using their dining plan, probably presumably actively driving up lines at certain restaurants to get people to not eat there at the end of the night. That's going to be one of those things that's a recipe for
Well, that,
disaster.
that happened to me on the pass holder preview day. It was 10 till 8. Checked out a couple places. They were in the process of closing. Best House was one of those.
Mhm.
Went to the Chicken Shack, and it was quarter till 9. All of a sudden, we got in line about 5 after 8. It said it was going to close, at 9, and I was still outside the door, at 8:40, 8:45.
Mhm.
We just left the line and just said heck with it, so we didn't get that second meal. But it was just, it was a little bit frustrating with that, and knowing that had they kept the other restaurants open, that would have alleviated that problem. Would have been a little easier to access the dining plan, use what I paid for. But I think, the visit frequency, as we're talking here, if you haven't bought your dining plan yet, you're thinking about it, is going to be the frequency. How often do you visit? So if you're somebody that goes, 30, 40, 50 plus times, probably worth it. And you can a little bit easier deal with some of the issues that we're talking about here. But if you only go 4 to 6 times, I think that the biggest factor is just going to be simply how much that you use it. It still may work in your favor, if you're visiting 10 plus times, but less than 10, I would really think about it if I were you. It may be smarter just to pay as you go or even leave the park if it's going to take you an hour to get food anyway, just leave the park. There's a lot of places nearby. There's Wendy's, there's Taco Bell, there's um, all kinds of places right around the park within a mile or two of the park. So you could save some hassle there if you want to do it that way. Um, but I think the better strategy here, Ryan, if you're thinking about this, is wait a few weeks into the season here, get closer to Memorial Day. Pay attention to what people are saying on social media. About the portion sizes, quality of the food. Are they enjoying meals? What do they like? The Coney barbecue, for instance. This year they have the smoked chicken over the rotisserie chicken. I asked a question on the season pass Facebook group, and also the Tower Topics Facebook group. Have you tried this? What were your thoughts? Pretty overwhelmingly positive about it. Most people liked it, recommended it, said they would get it again. You want to see if the operations are going to improve, the menu quality stabilizes, hours become more guest friendly at some of the locations. Some of them remain open during the week, which brings me to something that they did on the media day for Phantom Theater. If you watch the morning news shows, they uh, heavily promoted that they had the breakfast items at the French Corner.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody seemed to like it. The ones that tried it, opening weekend, seemed to really like it. But then, we're finding out that French Corner is only going to be open on weekends. So you can't even. So if you want the breakfast foods, or if you're somebody that drinks coffee, you got the drink plan, it has coffee on it, and you go on a Wednesday or Thursday, French Corner, from what we're hearing, isn't going to be open
At all during the week?
Not during the week.
Oh my God.
So why only on weekends? So why would you promote and showcase all the breakfast, food that you get that is on the dining plan at the French Corner if you can only use said dining plan on the weekends, because they're just not going to be open during the week because they don't feel that they're going to be busy enough. So those are the kind of things that you have to think about too, is that, what appears, that you are going to be able to get with this, you might not. They might, pull back and not open all the big pens in Camp Snoopy. How often do we see that open?
What's funny is I walked through Camp Snoopy with like a friend of mine doesn't visit the park super regularly. It's not like a big Tower Topics fan or anything like that. And they were like, "Oh, Pigpen's is open. I've never seen that open before," which is a heck of a comment for a 2-year-old restaurant.
Yeah, hardly open. But decide whether the plan, it fits your habits. When you visit, the dining plan, it can be a great value, for the right guest. You and I, Ryan, go enough that it's the right fit for us. But the value depends on the portion sizes that you're going to get, the quality, the operating hours of the restaurants, how often you visit. Sometimes holding off again can be the smartest move later. Just making sure that it's going to be worth your time getting it. That you're going to get. The meals are going to be solid with the portion sizes, the quality. You're going to not have to wait 45 minutes to an hour to get through the line to even get your food at some of these places. And again, I talked about the heavily promoted new breakfast items at French Corner on Media Day for Phantom Theater. That that now only being open weekends, that's a big disappointment for me, because I was looking forward to trying those. I'm not somebody that normally is going to go to the park on Saturday mornings too often, or Sunday mornings. I'll get there later in the day on the weekends, and that might be my only time to do it, but it's not breakfast food at that point in time for you. You've already had your breakfast, somewhere else. So things like this, I think, Ryan, it just makes getting the dining plan something you really have to think about, because what you bought it for may not be available when you go.
Yeah. But again, to be clear, to play devil's advocate, if you will, if you love Skyline, if you love burgers, if you love pizza, and especially if you love chicken tenders, then boy, do I have the plan for you. Although, like I said, I ate at Chicken Shack, and I told the story the last episode, but they told me that they no longer serve the chicken sandwich, which I came to find out is not true. They were just out of buns. But I got the sad, tiny little chicken nugget sized chicken tenders. So I don't even know if I can necessarily recommend it to my chicken tender loving friends.
Somebody had sent me a picture that they got 3 chicken tenders at the Chicken Shack, and they were basically about the size of the hush puppies that you would get
I wouldn't
at
know. I
Tony
never get my
Barbecue.
hush puppy.
Just real small, like almost like a little meatball size chicken tenders. So that was disappointing. I thought the chicken tenders at Chicken Shack last year were outstanding. So I hope that that's not going to be the case, and it's going to be real small little pieces. I know that they have changed to lesser quality meats and that in some of the locations around the park for burgers and that. So maybe that's the same thing with chicken tenders, that they kind of got a different source to get them from. That they're not as big, they're not as good as they were before.
Yeah. Well, so I ate 2 meals at the park over opening weekend. I had the Chicken Shack. We discussed that. And I had Panda Express. And I will tell you, to Panda's credit, it was as mediocre as ever. So hats off to Panda for maintaining that C plus average.
But Panda went from, you got 2 entrees before, now you only get 1.
Yeah, they changed that like last year, I think, to be
Middle of last year.
consistent with the rest of the chain, because that matters. And on top of that, if you want to be consistent with the rest of the chain, you also have the option of giving 2 entrees to the rest of the chain instead of taking away an entree here, aka they wanted to save money.
Yeah. Now 2024, I thought the dining plan was a great deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was the food around the park, it was among the best that I can remember Kings Island ever having. So it was a really good year for the F&B team in 2024. Last year, I thought they took a few steps back a little bit. There were some, departures in the food and beverage team. We saw Chef Major, left.
Yeah.
The food director left after Winterfest this year that they had. So, it's a little bit, you don't have that kind of leadership in place, of that presence of a Chef Major. Now, the 2 people that I know that are running F&B, they've been at the park, for several years, really good people, really want to do a great job in that. But it's also, what kind of resources do they have to work with, to make sure everything, comes off? How much time do they have for training everybody? We don't know that. But I think that they'll right the ship, and by Memorial Day, things will be running a lot smoother than they are right now.
I think so too, but you also have to remember, if Chef Major were still there, do you think that he would let his name be associated with, nickel-sized chicken nuggets and lesser quality beef and stuff? I feel like
Not at
that
all.
kind of falls back on, Chef Perez, as well as his 97 sous chefs that he has, because like a chef, so for those of you who don't know, a chef is the head of the kitchen. The sous chefs are below him. But the main aspect that a chef does is they create menus and they maintain quality control. So if quality control is going to fall, like if he didn't or had the inability to advocate for the guests, like, no, we're not going to use a lower quality meat, or he chose not to, I think that's kind of a black eye on him, and I feel like Chef Major kind of got out at the right time, assuming things don't improve, because your reputation kind of lies on what people think. If they had an executive chef in like 2003, 2004, do you think they would ever get hired by like a high-end country club? Or no, because the food was disgusting and it gave you Montezuma's Revenge, not the roller coaster, the diarrhea.
Yeah, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
One of the things that they again showcased on Media Day and heavily promoted was the foot-long hot dog in the brew house.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anybody that got that?
I saw people post online that they got it. Do you know anybody personally that got it?
I don't, but the pictures looked, that I saw in the Season Pass Facebook group,
Mm-hmm.
and some were posted on Tower Topics. I thought that, it looked really good in the pictures.
Yeah, I agree. It looks amazing in the pictures. I wonder what low quality meat they're using for that, because they took off.
But short term, thing. It's not something that's it's one of those chef specials that's only going to be around for a short time. Now I do like that because it drives a little bit of urgency when they do those kind of specials.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the fact that it drives that urgency, and usually those specials are pretty good.
I agree. I remember when they did the dip of the day. It was when you were still working at the park, and they stopped doing it in like July, and then they had the hot ham and cheese dip for the rest of the year.
Yeah, but that was good though. I mean, it was for the park, number one, it gives you content, to put out there on your social media channels. They include it on the dining plan, so it adds value to the dining plan when they do these specials. So I'm looking forward to trying it. I hope to be able to, get back to the brew house and try it before the special, the run ends in the spring here. But, from what I'm seeing on social media, it looks pretty good. I just haven't had a chance to talk to anyone that actually had it.
Yeah, I haven't been to the brew house yet this year, but I will advocate for that because I'll try that hot dogs. It sounds pretty good.
Try it this weekend and let me know how it is.
Yeah,
I'll
I'll,
be.
I'll try to try it this weekend. I Brewhouse is still my favorite restaurant. They did some menu changes. They got rid of the London Bridge, the fish sandwich. So my friend Alex,
That was a popular item. I mean, as far as I know, people like that.
I mean, is like halibut that expensive? They use the lowest quality meat possible for that too. So I don't see why they would take it off. But then they changed the BBLT, and it seemed like that was a little hit or miss because there's like quality, but that could be a training thing though. There's some sort of quality differences. And then was there something else that was removed? I can't remember. But yeah,
That might be the item that you're talking about. There's somebody posted that 3 times something that was supposed to go with it, wasn't on it. So they asked somebody to bring it, out. So they'd bring it out, but not all the things that they were missing. And then each time they brought back something. And by the time it got done, it was all just, we're ready to go.
yeah, it's like an Abbott and Costello skit, right? All right. So listeners, this is when we ask you, do you have the dining plan? If you don't yet, are you going to wait to see how these things iron out before you buy it? We love to hear in the comments. How many meals do you get per season on average? I want to hear that because I don't really count that sort of stuff, but there are people into the 50 and 60 meal range where it's like, even if the meal plan was like just hot dogs and burgers and cost $200, it would still be a good deal for you. But I want to hear your thoughts on the meal plan in the comments below.
Yeah, I think the people that we really want to hear from are those that maybe only go, under 10 times a year, because those are the ones that are going to be the most impacted by the inconsistencies.
Okay. Let's move on to the comments of the day. We got Airtime Axelal, I guess, on YouTube. Hello, Don. I'm the person who gave you a Mystic Timbers bracelet when you were in line for the racer. Love the podcast. Do you remember meeting somebody that gave you a Mystic Timbers bracelet?
I do. We were going through, the queue that's undercover, and right when you go to turn the corner, it was like right there where you know, they were ahead of us in line. They came over and they gave me the bracelet, which I really appreciate. It's something, whenever you meet guests, you always, appreciate that. But, it was nice to have the Mystic Timbers bracelet. And it was nice, to, I guess, be recognized and then have somebody that says they love the show.
Yeah. I sifted through and I actually cut out a bunch of comments of, hey, I saw you riding the train, but I didn't want to bother you or whatever. You're never bothering us. Absolutely come
Not
up.
at all.
Heck, I was giving out stickers to people, Don was supposed to too, but I never gave him the stickers.
Not at all. It's a lot of fun when people come up and, they say hello and, if they want to hang out for a little bit, ride some rides, we're up for that too. This was well before like social media, back in 1982, back in the days when I was riding the racer all the time. And there was a guy that, I knew from Iowa. He was an ACE member. He was spending his vacation week at Kings Island.
Mm-hmm.
And people, recognized me a little bit, from, I had just been on for like, I think it was a 2000th ride at that time.
Okay.
And other people started, and they just kind of hung out with us. And by the end of the night, we had a group of more than 40. So we all did, the night beast ride together. A couple had to go on a different train, but we went up. We were going to ride the log flume, and they always ask how many's in your group. How many's in your group? Some people say 4, some people say 5, 2, 3, whatever. We went up there. How many's in your group? 43. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? You get 43 in a boat, but just a lot of fun. That was one of my most memorable nights. Was just because people recognized me and came up and started talking, and we just invited them to kind of hang out for the day, and it was just so much fun. So if you're ever in the park, you see us, you see Ryan, you see me, don't assume that we're we're tied up or busy or don't want to be bothered, come up, say hello. We'd like to, you know, introduce ourselves to you if we don't know you already. And, just, we all have that same passion about Kings Island.
Yeah. And you can aspire. This is my work computer. I want to show this to you. So we've got a sticker from, this is from Severance. The work is important, or is mysterious and important. These are the Tower Topic stickers I've been giving out. This is the official Noah the Field Reporter sticker. You may recognize that guy. Bucky.
Bucky, yes.
Bucky the Beaver.
I don't have any stickers, so Ryan's going to be your person to go to if you want stickers.
Yeah, I'll get you stickers at some point, but I have a ton, I know I've got a ton of them, so I'm ready to give them out. But let's take a moment to give a shout out to our Prestige members, our beloved Prestige members. Our valuable prestige members. I want to give a big shout out to Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, Dakota Cole, Eric Grau, Gibson Hills, Connor Wheeler, Dustin Jackson, Songstress Miku, Medic 302, Eastern Coaster, guys and girls, Justin Y, Mike Garrett, Galaxy BY, Greggy Rocks, Kayla Lott, T Cleveland, Tim Dwelly, Sun Fun Sarah, and Ian Ross. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and some tiers even get a free t-shirt. So hit that link if you're interested in supporting Tower Topics in the best way possible, starting at just $2.99 per month. Woo!
Really appreciate the support.
Absolutely. I'm Ryan. That's Don. This is Tower Topics.